So here we are, looking at the shelf of shame. Mm-mm-mm. Hi friends, it's Kay. Welcome back to my channel. And today I am going to be bringing you my 25 and 25 TBR wrap up. It's not looking good, folks. So before we start, I'm going to pop right here what my actual TBR for this was. And what is kind of even sadder about this is that most of these were books I actually had on my 24 and 24 TBR that I never got to, so I just recycled them. And yeah, I still don't think any of those got read this year. Moving forward, I have an idea of what I want to do for my 2026 TBR, and ideally that will be coming to you in a video soon. But for right now, I do want to celebrate the victories of what was accomplished this year. And I do want to have a little disclaimer that I did actually start on 10,000 Skies Above You this week, and I'm hooked. I'm addicted. I did the first book in this series, I think my sophomore year of college, whatever 2021 was. And I, for some reason, just never picked up the sequels. These were also so hard to find in bookstores, so that should have made me even more eager to pick them up. But here we are. And I love this. It's just so addicting. There is something so intoxicating about reading a 2015, mid 2010 love triangle, especially when both the boys in this love triangle think of each other as brothers. They love each other. And I don't know, it's great. It's addicting. I always picture this as it kind of reads like fan fiction, but in the best way possible. So yeah, hopefully this will be finished before the end of the year. But I do want to point out that I did get this one started. However, I do want to get to the victories of this challenge. I read 7 of 25. No, it doesn't sound good no matter how you swing it. But I am very proud of myself because some of these are TBR veterans. So I'm just going to pull off the top here. So this was one of my infamous 2020 Bookmas hauls, and I really am so happy to say I enjoyed this book. So this year, and really always, I am always on the hunt for ballet books, especially books where like the ballet itself creeps into their lives. And this one doesn't have that to as much of an extent, but we are at the Royal Ballet Opera House School in Paris. And we are following these two friends. One is an American and one is a French girl, and it is all about how what they are willing to do to get to the top of their performances, what they're willing to do to get what they want. And this book also really just touched me personally, especially the author's note on the back. There is trigger warnings for eating disorders and just really depressed mental health and all of that, the dark side of the ballet world, as I call it. But as someone who never went through that, but as someone who watched a lot of people I cared about go through it, I really just loved and appreciated this message. And you can definitely tell that A.K. Small was a ballerina. She went through a lot of the stuff, or she witnessed some of the stuff. And I just really loved having her insight show through her writing. And I'm always going to hype up ballet books, especially ones that I don't hear anyone talk about. So if that is something that interests you, or you think that you are someone who would like reading about it, then I do recommend A Bright Burning Stars, and I am happy to get this off of my own TBR. Now, one of the books on this list that has been here, I think it's one of the oldest books on my TBR, and that is The Girl in the Blue Coat. And when I wrote my review, this is when a lot of political change is happening in America, and it was absolutely terrifying and just very much hitting home in a very nauseous way about reading about some of these things that we are learning about in this book with what was happening in America at the time and still is happening. And so we are actually in the Netherlands, and Amsterdam to be exact, during Nazi occupation. And we are following a girl who is working with trying to get Jewish people out, to get them out of the concentration camp, smuggle them out of the country. And in this book, we are going to be following a young girl. Her boyfriend has been killed in the war, and she stumbles upon this mystery of a missing Jewish teenager, and she becomes absolutely enthralled with it. And I overall really enjoyed this one. I'm not going to say it's one of my favorites, although for a long time this was allotted as the World War II fiction in some spaces. But I did really love Monica Hessey's writing, and back here I have They Went Left, so I'm hoping to get to that relatively soon. But I am so beyond excited to say I have finally read this book, and I am very happy I did. Speaking of books on my backlist TBR, although this one isn't as far back, but this is one of the one of the Marissa Meyer books I owned that I had not read yet. And since then, I've actually read both the books in this duology. And I have to say, With a Little Luck is my favorite. It actually is a contender for one of my favorite books of the year. But for right now, we are going to be talking about Instant Karma. And on the Marissa Meyer scale, I think most people agree this is her least liked work. It is contemporary magical realism with a high school romance at the center, so it is a little bit different than her fairy tale retellings. However, Marissa Meyer's magic with writing couples still came through this one. I will say Prudence drove me absolutely nuts for most of this book. I was a academic person in high school too. I was the person leading group projects. I was the one that took charge, but she drove me nuts. Absolutely drove me nuts. And Quint actually had a really, really sweet romantic gesture. And underlyingly, I liked them as a couple overall, but Prudence, she drove me nuts. But like with most Marissa Meyer characters, I ended up still having a soft spot for her. And this also involves a lot of marine life and marine biology, which I wasn't a major in, but one of my best friends in college was. So I did know a lot of what was being talked about in here. And there was also a really big conservation conversation, which of course was my major. So I enjoyed this one. It just spoke to me. I really liked this duology. It's not my favorite by her, but With a Little Luck, the book 2 in the series, I did really love. It also has that D&D feel to it. But I am happy to say that now I only own one duology by Marissa Meyer left on my physical TBR to read, so it did its job. And I am just knocking out of the park all these sequels I have had on my TBR forever. Soul of the Sword. Now, you know I really liked a book when I read book 1 years ago, and I remember exactly how that book ended, and that was me with Shadow of the Fox. I loved Yumiko, that romance between the yearning, the tension carried through this book, and this also ended with one of my absolute favorite book tropes. And I'm not going to spoil what it is, but if you like Voice in the Head, I haven't read as many books with this trope in particular, but it's like the Voice in the Head trope. So there's that. But in this book, we are once again following our ragtag group, Yumiko and her other band of friends, and they are trying to rescue, oh my gosh, I forgot his name. I remembered hers, but not his. Tatsumi. And he has, he's dealing with some stuff. And I can't really say much about this one because it does spoil book 2, but I finished this and I need to read book 3 next year. And once again, I still stand by this. Feels like an anime that I would actually like. I love the found family. I love a soft female character who stays by her own strength. She's not the biggest bad. She's not the strongest, but she is clever and sweet and she cares so much, and that is like her strength. And I love that. And also, when she is the light in his life, that trope, when she's the light in his darkness, just had it. And I am so glad I read it. I'm glad that I'm going to get to book 2 next year. Mark my words, it will be on my 26th and 26th. But yeah, once again, checking off some long awaited on that 25 and 25 list. And then I want to save my 2 rare books for last because that is what 2 of them are. So I'm just going to now, I actually got to another Twisted Tale. And this is the book series where it's like, what if something changed in the plot? And in this one, it is what if Tiana made a deal that changed everything? And it involves her dad coming back. And I honestly am just a sucker for Princess and the Frog. Tiana and Naveen are one of my absolute favorite Disney couples. Charlotte's in here too. And I just really like this concept. And essentially, in her deal, she gets her restaurant, she gets her dad back from the dead, and it goes along that line. And I actually really liked this. This was one of my first reads of the year, so I knocked it out really early. But I am happy to keep making dents in this series. I am a Disney girl at heart. And I am going to say I do recommend this. This is one of my favorites in the Twisted Tale universe. Checking off reading a subscription book in my list, I have Dragon Fruit. I read her first book, Year of the Reaper, last year. It was a 5-star. I loved it. And from the very first page, I knew I was going to love this one. And I think I kind of set my hopes a little too high because I definitely prefer Year of the Reaper, but this one just had some gorgeous writing. I loved learning more about Polynesian mythology. And there's also a really sweet romance in here that I was rooting for the entire time. It has a quest-based storyline, and honestly, if you want to, I feel like the most obvious answer from this book cover is it kind of gives Moana vibes, which of course is Polynesian mythology. But I really did like this one. There's also sea dragons, and that is not something I have read too much about. So I got to experience that side of dragon mythology. And I did overall really like this one. The writing was absolutely beautiful. I loved lead characters in this. It wasn't a favorite. It's not my favorite of hers, but I do really want to shout about it a little bit because it was really good. I don't really hear anyone talking about this one near as much as they should be. And if you have a book of the month subscription, maybe get your hands on this as a backlist pick. And then one of my goals for my 25 and 25 is I went to Rare, the romance book festival in London. So I wanted to check off 2 of the Rare books that I owned physically. And this one, Opposite Ends of the Sea, I first heard about from a Frolic in Fiction, Ashley, back when she was on BookTube. And I have since not heard anyone talk about this one, but I did get it signed by one of the authors, Daniela A. Mira. I got it signed by her. And I also got one of her little cards. So overall, very happy I read this book. Overall, not a fantasy romance favorite. However, it was definitely unique. In this world, we have a modern day, essentially modern day, with technology and cars and electronics and ability to travel countries. But there's even universities, and it's definitely an urban fantasy. So if you are looking for an urban fantasy recommendation, this one is something I like. There was just too many time jumps that didn't make the most sense. It felt like the story was dragging on. I really liked the last third of this book, but honestly, leading up to it, I kept putting it down. I took forever to finish this. I think it was the time jumps just slowing me down. There's also a lot of mommy issues at the end of this book, which made me angry. I love my mom, by the way. But and the couple was not I don't know. Honestly, for me, this was just overall, it was there. I really liked the world building though. And there is actually a Hades and Persephone retelling a little bit later on in this series, and I do have that on my Kindle that I'm going to get to eventually. But overall, I'm really happy I read this. I still love the cover, and it checked off one of my 2020 Bookmas haul books. So, bonus. And of course, I have it signed. So. And last but not least, on my kind of sad list, I was able to get to Never Fall for Your Fiance. And I love my historical romance, and this was a 5-star new favorite. I don't know why I've put off the rest of them so long, but I got Never Rescue a Rogue immediately after finishing this book, and I did get them both signed. But this is honestly my favorite thing about this is all 3 of the Merrywell sisters. They are named after Roman goddesses. So this one we have, oh my gosh. So in this one we have Minerva, and I just love humor in this. They had some super cute dates. They are in a fake relationship, and she brought along her sisters with her because their dad is, well, he's not doing really good as a dad. And she is in charge of her 2 younger sisters, and so of course she drags them with her, and she ends up being this man's fake fiance because his mom is on his back. His parents are worried about him, and he's trying to, get them to leave him alone. So he and Minerva fake date, and of course we all know how that's going to end. I really like the setup for book 2 as well, so I need to get to that. I forgot. I don't know why I put it off. It's just who I am as a person, I guess. But super glad I read this. I'm so happy I got to meet Virginia Heath, and I did make a bookmark for her of this book that I gave to her, so that was really fun. If I remember in editing, I will put up pictures of me meeting these 2 lovely ladies because, hello, that's amazing. That's so cool. All right, this better be in frame. So this is my wrap up for 25 and 25. It looked a lot more better looking at it like this. But on the graphic, yeah, I did not do so hot. Alright, thank you so much for watching this video. In the comments below, let me know if you accomplished your 25 and 2025, or if you have a favorite from that list you were able to get to. And if you would like to stick around my bookish corner of the interweb, I would love to have you. And even if not, thank you so much for staying and watching this video. Don't forget to like if you liked it, and if you'd like to, subscribe. I'd love and appreciate to have you here. And until next time, I'm Kay. Bye!